Oh, yeah. Yeah, we're gonna steal.
Came out, because it came out in 2019. No, it's not.
I have to look at my son just got.
Yes.
Let me welcome folks here to our meeting tonight. And this is probably one of the most important meetings I think we're going to share with our three cities this year. Certainly not the only meeting, but an important meeting that we've come together with three cities to continue our conversation in regards to our fire service that we want to have for our citizens in East County and our three cities. So welcome to tonight's meeting. As Chair Vega Peterson walks in, thank you.
Good timing.
And yeah, have a seat. And what I'd like to do first, though, but again, welcome people. We'll go around and go through quick introductions. And then I will make a few comments about the work that we have at this point. I'll turn it over to our city managers to walk us through this agenda and take us through that. So the intent is to have this as a dialogue. We have information and you've got a packet that would give you some background. But when we leave here tonight, hopefully we come out of here, and what we need to do is come out of here with the next step in the direction that we need to continue our discussion, our three city discussion on where this fire study and where our fire service and what it's going to look like. Because if we remember, the date is July 1. This contract is up. So we got some work to do. We're doing a pretty good job so far. We got to keep it going. So quickly, I'm Mayor Minor from Wood Village, and I'll go to my left.
Jairo Rios Campos, Council President. Jairo for non-Spanish speakers.
Randy Lauer, Mayor of Troutdale.
Dave Ripma, City Councilor of Troutdale.
Jordan Wittrin, City Council, Troutdale.
Jeff Dennerlein, Fairview City Council.
Steve Owen, Fairview City Council.
Annie Weber, Fairview City Council.
Steve Marker, Fairview City Council and Fire User Board.
Paul Copeland, Fairview City Council. And Keith Kuderna, Fairview Mayor.
And Mark Clark, a City Councilor of Wood Village.
And can we just go ahead, Greg? Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
On the and also joining us virtually, can have an introduction there, and Victoria, if you'd proceed. Is that Jeffrey?
Yeah, hi, this is Jeffrey One, Troutdale City Council. Thanks.
Thank you. Sandy?
Yep, Sandy Glantz, Troutdale City Council.
Thank you. And Jordan?
Ed Tromke, I'm a city attorney in Troutdale.
Okay, thank you. Am I missing anybody before I go out to the audience? Greg, why don't you start? Well, excuse me.
Greg Dirk, City Manager for Wood Village.
Okay, thank you.
Rachel Fuller, interim city manager, Fairview.
Ray Young, City Manager, City of Troutdale.
And can we just start right across the back there? Seth, would you lead us off? Thank you. Good.
And Stephenson, Troutdale resident.
Thank
you.
Thank you very much. Now I'm going to turn this over to Greg Dirks. You got a packet that was authored by Greg and our other city managers, and he'll walk us through this agenda and get us started with the discussion.
Great. Thank you, mayors and city councilors, chair and respective staff. Give me a moment here. We will walk us through our evening.
While Greg is queuing that up, just thanks to all three of our city managers because they've been working on this and they're doing the hard work. So city managers, thanks for the work you've done thus far and leading us in this effort.
And I'd like to preface, if I misstate or if leaving something out, please pop up and join me up here. This doesn't need to be the Greg show by any means. Before we really start getting the work, I just want to recognize Spencer Tejadas, a Gresham was critically injured in a fire 2.5 to 3 weeks ago in Gresham. He arrived on scene, was told someone was still inside. He was the first in. Unfortunately, suffered very severe injuries, still recovering. We just want to wish him and his family a speedy recovery, both physically and mentally from that. And just a reminder to all us all, what we're talking about when we talk about fire and emergency services. So just a moment for Spencer and his family. So we're going to touch real quickly on the background, both 30-year background, more recent background, what we know of what Gresham is up to, spend a bit more time on the fire feasibility analysis request for proposals that's been drafted, get your feedback on that. We then have a moment and a few slides for the county chair and her team to talk about where they're at, both with AMR currently and then the updated ambulance service plan. We'll then talk about what we call other considerations. So assuming we go forward with this analysis at a future point in time, 12, 18 months from now, there's a lot more work to do. So this is really just kicking it all off. I just want to again brief everyone on how big this picture is. We also then save some time at the end, mostly going to be led by Troutdale, that they're doing a lot of stuff on the police side. So the other side of our public safety, just in terms of where that's at with contract work and where the three cities can come together. So what we hope to get out of this is agreement on the RFP, request for proposal for the analysis, so we can get that launched and advertised, figure out who from which city is going to be part of the review team so we can get that awarded hopefully before the close of summer so we can get that underway. Again, update on work and then just deepen our continued understanding of this work ahead of us. So since 1995, the city's left District 10 and been contracting with Gresham Fire for fire and emergency services. The vote actually took place in the earlier 90s, but it was officially done and everything settled in 1995. We've had intergovernmental agreements in place with Gresham at 10-year increments. The 2015 renewal was not contentious per se, but it brought up a lot more questions in terms of costing considerations, efficiencies, and just quality of service vis-a-vis what does Gresham receive versus the three cities receive. We were able to come to an agreement, but it did raise some questions that we started to address in late 20 and 2021. And for those that were around during that time, you may recognize that as the Safer Council. And it was representatives from the three cities, Gresham Fire, District 10. And at the end of that works, the Safer Council recommended that, a district makes sense and we should further pursue that initiative and effort. At that same time, Gresham went through some leadership changes and decided to pause and then ultimately just left that recommendation out. So we are now picking that back up. And part of that work is in last year, Wood Village had an update to a 2013 study that was done as part of the 2015 negotiations, looking at more or less what is the service demand and service load of fire and EMS services. In 2013, a lot of it was lower acuity medical calls. And by that, I mean a call where someone does need some assistance, some support, but whether an ambulance or fire truck arrives in 5 minutes or 15 minutes, the outcome's not going to change. The broken arm's not going to get more broke, for example, versus your heart attack, strokes, severe trauma. Those are the critical events. Conservatively, 80% of the calls are those lower acuity medical, 20% fire and critical incident. That have not really changed in the 10 or so years since our previous study. So again, we're all aware our current contract with Gresham ends a year from now, basically, and the 3 cities, we've had work groups put together since the fall time looking at this process, this question, and that's how we got here this evening. And so there's certainly been some discussions with District 10 members of what maybe joining them back could look like, different options and alternatives, and that's where it's again leading to this request for proposals to really dive deep into the questions that you have all had as we've been briefing you on this throughout the several months. Gresham and its voters did approve an operating levy this past May. It's $1.35 per thousand of assessed value. I think it's estimated to collect about $12 million in its first full year. Now, my understanding is both from a staff side as well as just elected to elected, there hasn't been any kind of formal conversations or renewal request, but during a Gresham Council meeting in November, it was stated at that meeting that if we were to be paying our fair share, it'd be an 86% increase. That's basically nearly doubles our rates, and you all know what you currently pay and can imagine what that would be. We were also made aware that Gresham, at the very least, has sent looking at the financial impacts of a fire district. I was told it was awarded, but I have not been able to confirm that with Gresham management. They've been oddly silent the past couple of months. Assuming it's been awarded, some of their questions would be different than our questions that are in our RFP. They have assets and liabilities that need to be addressed. If it were to go to a district, we have no such questions to answer, but there's still commonalities, and hopefully, if that is true, that they're looking at the financial impacts of district, our 2 processes can marry together at some point and have a joint venture. But as I said, there's not been a lot of communication and coordination, but that doesn't mean things are off the table. Want to take just a quick minute, talk about property taxes, everyone's favorite subject, just so I know the term compression gets talked about a lot, and just making sure we're working from the same definition of compression. And this is a result of Measure 5, which is done in the early 90s. That set a $10 per thousand of real market value for general government. And it's important to remember that's on the real value or real market value of the tax. Measure 50 then created that assessed, and I put real quotes in real market. It's the county's assumed real market value. It's not necessarily based on what a home sells for, or what you see on Zillow, for example. It's the county assessor's assessment or estimate of a real market value. So if you do get Measure 5 compression, local option levies are actually compressed first and then followed by other underlying jurisdictions. Where we get confusion, and we have some graphics here, is that $10 per thousand on real market value. This is a real example from Sweet Home. You'll see their general government tax is actually just over $16. And that doesn't mean it all gets compressed back down to 10. It depends on, it's a property by property assessment. Property A, let's assume it has a real market value of $200,000. So that $10 per thousand, it has a total bucket worth of $2,000 in general government collects you can collect. That rate is then actually applied to the assessed value because it's collected on the lower of assessed or real market. And short of the Great Recession, it's always been the assessed values, the lesser of them. So assuming it had an assessed value, and this is actually a real case, at assessed value of $120,000, you take the 1632 times by 120, gets a total amount of $1,959. So you're collecting all of that tax of $16.33, even though the limit's 10, because the limit is based on that real market value. So you have a total option to collect $2,000. They're collecting a little over $1,900. Now we see compression in property B, where again, same $200,000 real market value, but it's assessed closer to $170. At that point, you've now compressed $775 of compression loss. And again, local option levies are always compressed first. So districts, general governments, those are secondary. Now, what does this mean over time? We put this together just to show how compression changes over time, and that if this were the case in 1997, yeah, you have that $775 compression loss. Assuming a 5% real market growth, taxable assessed is capped at 3% growth. You see this diminishing over time as a real market continues to outpace the assessed. So you're building in more margin. And that, in current time, the one that was compressed 30 years ago now has additional volume of over $1,100. So while compression may be talked about as, oh, we can't have compression, we can't have compression, the flip side of that coin is compression actually is, we're collecting everything available to local governments. If you don't have compression, it can be thought of as you're leaving stuff on the table. Not saying that's what we want to do or that's the right use of the funds or taxing ability. That's just another way to think about it. That if you actually are experiencing compression loss, you actually are striving to collect all of your available resource. And this is done property by property, year by year. So what may be compressed one year can outgrow that in future years. So I just wanted to take that moment to just remind everyone when we talk about compression, what that is, and that it's not necessarily a bad thing or a permanent thing. And there is confusion, because I had it myself, on that $10 limit. That doesn't mean, oh no, you total these up and we're over $10, everything else gets compressed. It's the $10 assessment on that real market value is the key, not necessarily what this column adds up to. I'm going to pause to see if we're all still good. Okay. So the fire feasibility analysis, we try to do a pretty brief staff report that walked through why it's important and what it aims to do. We also attached the draft RFP that's been vetted by the 3 city managers here that aims to answer these questions. Basically, we're looking for how we can operate a fire and emergency service. And that's everything from a new district partnering with the current district. How does that district then may partner with other agencies or stand up its service? What are those impacts? And then really looking at what is our service demand and the most efficient ways to satisfy that demand. So basically, we're looking at the cost governance model, the capital needs, whether it's new equipment, personnel, stations, et cetera, how it's implemented, what kind of votes are needed. Is it a public vote of the 3 cities, of a district, of county? And then the relative timelines. One thing that you've probably heard before is this is a multi-year effort. Let alone then working through the final feasibility needed to start a new district or working with the current district. So this report would help analyze and break those components down. So then you all get information to say, these parts make sense. Maybe you don't want to go this route. This may cost too much. What more information do we need? So specifically in the RFP, we're looking at District 10 again, Clackamas District 1. And so while they're not contiguous to our 3 cities, they are contiguous to both Gresham and District 10. So that could be an option to either subcontract out, merger. So they'd be looking at what are District 1's options. Certainly Gresham Fire is still a very viable and real option. It's just a matter of what does that look like. A new district has certainly been resonating with people and what we could build together. And because we didn't want to leave stuff off the table, any other provider option that may come up during the analysis, the consultant may think, oh, this fire service over here may be interested, or we've heard good things about, I'll say Portland Fire, for example. I'm just not saying they're going to be interested, but we didn't want to leave anything on the table if stuff comes up during these conversations and this process. So what we'd really hope for out of this is, again, a full evaluation of all the service options, a impartial recommendation and strategies for those options and what is most feasible, what agreements, legal considerations, or otherwise is needed to move that forward. And then again, just what are the pluses and minuses of all the options so you all can make that informed decision. What we know, we believe it has an estimated cost between $100,000 and $120,000. And I believe we've all budgeted in our collected funds to help support this. It will take about 9 to 12 months to complete through various interviews with current providers, community members, interested parties, you all, staff, looking at budgets. And so what we're hoping to do is if hopefully you've taken, be able to at least look at the RFP. And if this is answering the questions that you need answered, you say, yes, go ahead and release it. We'll release it this month, hopefully be able to award it end of the month so we can get this project started yet this summer. It's generally helpful that this is a 3-city effort. It's generally helpful that one agency holds a contract with the provider, and then through an intergovernmental agreement, the other cities are then party to that. And so there's, obviously a review committee for the RFP itself, but also lead people for each city as the consultant has questions or needs to schedule things. There's a point person at each city, and really, yes, one city's holding the contract. It's a 3-city effort. Because Troutdale's already doing some financial work on this effort for us, looking at some property taxings, compressions, fee options. We know Fairview's in a transition. Wood Village would like to be the lead agency on this and help support the effort in that role. The other thing we would need, and you don't have to decide this part tonight, but who from your councils would want to be part of that review committee? And then who from your respective teams wants to still be part of the day-to-day RFP work once we do the analysis part? Questions on that?
And that's one that I believe we probably want to take action on tonight. And because it is a contract, I think we should probably go through an official motion. But I'll have you thought through that, or
The thought would be, let's just assume the other two councils are fine with Wood Village holding the lead on it, and they're fine with the RFP as is. We will get it released. Once the RFPs come back, we'll work with whomever from those cities that are part of that review committee. The review committee meets, makes a recommendation. That recommendation would actually go back to the Wood Village Council for award since we're holding the contract. We would then have IGAs with the other two cities to be party to the overall effort. So don't need a formal motion to say, let's release it. But I think as long as the councils are accepting of the process, that would be sufficient.
well, let's wait for some questions then. So this is a good place to pause. Questions from our councils.
Looks like Councilor Glantz has a question.
Yeah.
Yeah, Councilor Glantz.
Yep, I have, I see the 9 to 12 months for completion. What do we do in the meantime? Since contracts are up well before then.
So that's a future part of the slide is part of this, not part of the feasibility, but part of the work is still what are we going to do with Gresham and how are we going to work with Gresham? Some of the questions we've proposed in the RFP that we hope to get earlier in the process deals with cost for service type of questions. And so that can be used to help negotiate and talk with Gresham about a continuation of the current contract. But yes, the negotiating Gresham is still on the table and needs to be done. And that's further down the presentation of things still yet to do.
There'd be some other things too, I believe we could do. And that would be beginning to do some preliminary polling. We could be talking to a PR firm that would help us go forward if we decide to go in that direction.
Different financial feasibility works.
We'd be doing and obviously
responding to the questions and processes and done. So it's
and certainly one of those things that we all probably need language for is after this meeting, some common language that three cities will use as we move forward here. It doesn't mean that each city is not going to have a specific, interest, but certainly some common language about what we're trying to accomplish here.
common talking
To educate the public, right, that you're talking about.
Yes.
Yeah, common talking points and then differentiation based on each community's respective needs.
Are we taking questions about the actual RFP right now or anything in general?
Well, I think probably the RFP, if we can move.
RFP or its process.
Yeah.
Under the scope of work, the second bullet point, perform interviews with internal stakeholders such as firefighters, EMS personnel, and administrative staff of fire and EMS service providers. Are we worried about putting current staff members in a difficult position by answering questions in an open forum?
Well, I mean, to say open forum, I think would be with the consultant, not clearly in a public meeting. And, I think we can work with the consultants. I mean, I like to believe whomever we hire has done this in many places and knows how to gain information without sharing specifics of who said what. And, what we're trying to do is just get an understanding of what works, what doesn't work from those who do the work.
Okay.
So
And then,
not necessarily airing dirty laundry of
Right.
the organization.
right, yeah. And then a part of the evaluate potential service provider options under Clackamas Fire District 1, you talked about a merger.
Mhm.
What can that look like? What could a merger with Fire District 1?
I mean, what could an option be is District 10 says, we can't provide the service. We think District 1 could. They could do, a merger into District 10 and then into the 3 cities as an option, or it could be maybe we decide, great, we're part of District 10 again, but then District 1 is the actual contracted provider for District 10, for example. I think, again, those questions can be flushed out of what merger looks like and how maybe even phased in. That's something Sandy Fire District has had it analyzed with District 1 for a service provider, for example.
Okay, so because we don't touch District 1 and
Correct. It's not a legal prohibition, but it's kind of by practice, districts don't jump boundaries that aren't contiguous.
Okay.
Gresham is contiguous though. So if we can get Gresham back to a larger collective table, it'd be an interesting conversation or a piece to that puzzle.
Or the bridge is District 10.
Yeah.
As you're saying,
I like the language and the deliverables with regards to the RFP as written. And I'll just start the conversation further by saying that I'm comfortable, I should say, with Wood Village taking the lead as a lead agency with regards to this.
Thank you, Mayor Lauer. And remember, this isn't making any decisions for us.
No.
This is providing the information we're going to need to really sort this out and decide what it would be best for either our three cities, or what would be the logical next steps if we don't find something here that might work.
Mr. Glass raised your hand again.
Yeah, I was going to say, agreed. This was more, let's get on the same page. And as 3 cities, because we know that this is coming within a year. And at least we're looking in the same direction now. Whereas 2 months ago, we weren't.
Thank you. Councilor Glantz.
Yeah, I'm just curious. Don't take this wrong. It's truly just a question. Does Village have the resources to take lead on this?
I'm going to answer yes.
Just truly a question.
While we're taking lead and we're the main point of contact for consultant, that doesn't mean the other cities and its staff aren't involved. It's not unlike some of our other 3 city initiatives and efforts. Think Main Streets on Halsey, for example. We've had different cities be a lead on that, but it's still very much a multi-city project. If that helps kind of make an analogy for it.
Okay.
And that Wood Village is not just dictating the process.
And is the Wood Village taking the lead on the RFP or on the actual negotiations?
We haven't talked about fire negotiations. That should probably be a separate conversation.
Yeah, that's down the road yet.
Probably fall time would be my guess, as we'd gather all again and hopefully have heard from Gresham a little bit and can better understand their perspectives, and we all gather again and probably develop a work group that can be part of a negotiating team. That was done in the 2015 negotiations. It worked out well. We were able to get to yes from all the parties. So my guess is for the Gresham negotiation side, that'll be a separate effort, but still a combined 3-city effort.
Thank you.
Other questions? I'm not hearing any other questions. So if we're good with that, I'm going to record that as we have a consensus to move forward. Or another question?
Yeah, more of a statement than a question.
Okay.
So, we have a ad hoc committee currently working, and we haven't really had a full report, on what their findings are. So I don't want to discredit the work they've been doing.
Mm-mm.
So I'd like to hear, in Troutdale anyway, I'd like to hear a recommendation from that group before we make a decision, on Wood Village taking the lead. I don't want to, there might be a different option that Troutdale's discovered that might be a better way to go. I don't know that yet, though.
Now, on this, I don't mind Wood Village taking the lead on it, because I've taken the lead on the economic study. I will send a copy of the contract. They'll know what's going on if I get any feedback until July 22nd. But I'll send it to them to get any feedback on it. Because I think we'd like to get it done out before July.
And that's probably a good work group. So if you couldn't hear Ray's response, it was basically, yes, we have this work group. He will send the RFP to them, and to keep things moving forward. My guess is there'll be a large part of them, the work being done to help answer questions through the analysis process. This just really just starts a deeper process of answering questions I'm sure they have had, and that certainly I'm sure all of you have had about different service providers and the options and cost.
There's going to be plenty of work for everybody as we move forward on this. So we all going to have a chance to roll up our sleeves and dig into this. We all good on this? All right. Well, I'm going to just again, with a consensus here, we're going to move forward with Wood Village with this RFP and the shared cost as you've seen it as in the deliverables there. Thank you.
And so before I introduce the chair and her team, I just want to mention why we're kind of talking about AMR and a medical transport. That is a big piece of any fire emergency service. Although hasn't been quite optimal with AMR and response times and integration with the fire part of everything. And we think there's actually an opportunity now with this process and the process that county is going to talk about to understand each other's where they operate in and how the county and its requirements, our needs and concerns from our community. Actually use this as an opportunity to hopefully build a better or at least a different system that marries the two together. So with that, I'm going to turn over the chair and team so you don't have to listen to me for a few minutes.
And Madam Chair, before you start, I again want to welcome you back. And respectably, the chair has met with the three mayors earlier, about a month ago or so, and brought her team out to meet with us about the ambulance service and the whole question about two paramedics or one paramedic and one EMT. So, and we spent about an hour with that, and they spent some time walking us through that. So now we'll probably have an update of where that conversation was and where it's at now. So thank you again for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mayor Minor. I really did appreciate the chance to meet with you and Mayor Lauer and Mayor Caderna.
You don't have to say it.
I was-
Just keep.
Coderna. To me phonetically because I wanted to get it right. So I'll practice. But it was a really good chance to sit down and talk face to face. And I really appreciate having this opportunity tonight to actually meet with all of you from the three cities to talk about where we are and what's happening. So I am going to talk a little bit about where we are right now and then some of the work that we're undertaking and some of the ways that I think that we could be aligning some of the work that you're doing, this discussion that you're having as we're moving forward. So I know that the primary purpose of this meeting is to address the ability analysis for the future of fire and EMS relative to the agreement that you currently have with the city of Gresham. So my goal is to briefly update you on what's happening, what we're doing at the county level right now to improve ambulance response times, as well as those longer range plans that I mentioned. So on this slide right here, this is talking about where we are right now. So we entered into mediation with AMR about mid-March. And, you know, it's always been our goal to, and commitment to work collaboratively with AMR to really support their ability to come into compliance with their contract and, more importantly, deliver the services that our community expects from our emergency management system. So this mediation is based on a fine that I imposed in November last year for compliance in the month of March 2023. And that was non-compliance with the response times that they're contracted to provide. The fine itself and the process that you go through when the fine is levied was really an important catalyst for AMR to come to the table to have the conversations that we're having right now about solutions to the situation we're finding ourselves in. You know, the mediation process is ongoing. And obviously the mediation process is also confidential so that we can get to the best possible solutions. So without speaking to specifics, I do want to say that our goal, Multnomah County School, has always been to develop and agree with some intermediate solutions for AMR to come into compliance with the intention of returning to current contract requirements after staffing challenges have improved. And so ambulance staffing is certainly part of the picture of what we're talking about. I would say that the mediation has been productive. I'm looking back because it's the folks who are sitting with me and behind me who have been an immediate part of that process, but it's really been an opportunity that our team has taken to collaborate and to compromise as we're having our conversation. So as I said, those discussions are ongoing, and I look forward to sharing some updates with all of you, I think, very soon on this process. Can we go to the next slide, please? Thank you, Dr. Bruno. So this slide talks more about the work that we're doing right now in our ambulance service plan assessment. So back in February, our board voted to allocate funding to begin an early reassessment of our county's ambulance service plan. Full funding for the work of that assessment was given 2 weeks ago when we passed our fiscal year 25 Multnomah County budget. And the ambulance service plan is really the document, the policy document that defines our system and our contract with the ambulance service provider. So it's really the foundational document that our system and contract is built on. The process that we're going through is going to be the basis for our next ambulance service provider procurement. So per the contract, that would be scheduled to take place no later than 2028. That's what the current contract. But as I said, we started it early because we really want to have a chance to take a look at that. The last time that the ambulance service plan was revised and readopted was back in 2016. That was actually the year before I joined the Board of Commissioners. And that happened after a lengthy stakeholder engagement process. It's a very long process. The ambulance service plan assessment that's happening is really it's really focused on tackling some of the big policy questions, such as any permanent changes to appropriate ambulance staffing, response time requirements, and the role of our system partners. So really taking a look at those big policy issues that are fundamental in our EMS system. And really those critical issues should be addressed through a thorough, deliberative process. It was important to me, though, to start this process early, because as we're having the conversations about the current state of our system, we should not be making major changes to our EMS system without full transparency and understanding about all of the consequences and costs. And so I really say that because the assessment itself is going to help us make informed decisions about how we want our EMS system to be structured through a thorough and equitable process that isn't just responding to the loudest voices or any kind of political pressure. It's really taking a look at the importance of the system overall. So right now, the RFP for the consultant contract to do the assessment just closed, and we're going to be starting that evaluation to select the vendor very soon. We've recently hired a dedicated system designer. health department to help with this work. So that's a really important position as we're moving forward. And we are going to have a robust community and partner engagement process. It's going to involve a lot of parties. And it's really my expectation and my commitment that East County cities are going to be engaged in this process. We want you to be engaged. We want you to be consulted. And so that's, part of me being here tonight is really to make sure that that's clear and we're starting that off. And the other thing I want to say is as you're considering the fire feasibility analysis, I think there will be opportunities to see where we have synergy between the two processes, where we have some efficiencies between the ambulance service plan assessment and your process. I think particularly as we're talking about EMS subject matter expertise, as well as any community engagement activities that we might be taking on as we're trying to really get the public's voice in this as well. So really open to identifying some ways that we can align this work, that we can work together on those things and maybe find some opportunities for some new things. And those are really, really to say, what are the mutual and shared aims of the two different processes that we're looking at? And then how can we piggyback on that work to really make the most of these things that are happening as we're taking a serious look that's really going to have impacts, we know, on our emergency management system, and especially what's happening here in East County with your cities and the fire response. There is one more slide, but that is mostly just for background. This is about some legislation that is taking place, legislative work that is taking place down in Salem, or to take a look at the emergency medical services modernization from the statewide higher level perspective. It's really taking a look at the statewide policies and system that all of our local plans work within. So that's just some background on that. I will leave that there, and I will open it up in case there's anything I did not say or anything else the team wants to add. Okay, I'm happy to answer some questions or.
Thank you. I want to open this up, but mayors, since we've heard some of this before, I'm going to open it up to mayors there first.
Well, I just want to first say thank you, Chair, for coming out and your work on this, but also being open to address. It's an easy meeting to come to because you got all three cities here at one time, but I still want to say thank you for coming out and keeping us informed and keeping us up to date as to what the county is doing, even though it's not super detail oriented because of the process that you're in the middle of right now. Mm-hmm. But I want to say thank you for keeping us informed with the steps moving forward. It takes a lot, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you.
Very good.
Yes, very much. Thank you. I appreciated your time coming out before and now. And it is easy pickings. The first question I have, if you're looking at House Bill 4081, establishes a 19-member EMS advisory board. Who makes up that board, and where would that board be selected from?
So this is a board that will be selected by the legislature, right? Because this is convened at the legislative level. The bill itself may actually speak to who's on the 19-member board. I'm phoning a friend.
Tom informed me about this. It hasn't been actually read it. It's pretty long.
Yeah.
One person.
Okay.
Small. Usual Oregon legislature. It's on probably on page 20.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, when we last met, and mayors, you can correct me if I'm not remembering this right, but you were talking about some pilots that you were going to do.
Yeah.
Are they underway, and have you learned anything, or what's the learnings that's taken place from that?
Yeah, so we have had two pilots that have been running through to get at some of the non-compliance on response times without resorting to fines. So those pilots actually went into place prior to this whole conversation around the fines and the mediation that we've been involved in. And those two pilots, one is having a paramedic helping to triage and respond to some calls that as they're coming into the BOAC system, as they're coming into 911. And then the second is having the kind of basic ambulance support where we have 2 EMTs that are responding to lower acuity calls as they get identified. So those have been in process for a while now. We've had some good, I think, outcomes with those. I think what we're hoping to see is additional focus on making sure that those are fully staffed so that we can have the number of those pilot ambulances out and about and responding that we need to based on the level of calls that are getting. And anything else that you would like to add?
Sure. On that basic life support pilot that the chair mentioned, it's been in place for about 9 months or so now. And usually it's on average about 10 ambulances a day that are out doing just those kind of low acuity, like the chair mentioned, those types of calls that don't require life-saving interventions. And for a wide majority of those, over 90% of those calls, the appropriate care is being done that was kind of called in. So we know, when the calls come in and say this is, a type of call, broken arm that someone mentioned earlier, when that EMT only ambulance arrives, oftentimes, and a wide majority of times, those are appropriately handled and stabilized and either taken to the hospital or referred to a lower acuity intervention.
Thank you, because and just to state maybe the obvious, how critical that study in particular is going to be, but 68% of our calls in Wood Village are lower acuity calls. So that's certainly going to factor in to the kind of service we want from our fire studies, is to recognize that lower acuity could be handled perhaps differently than what we are currently doing and spending money on. So I appreciate that update. And just one last thing, could you, let's say that as you're proceeding with these negotiations, okay, and if I heard you right, 2028 is when the new contract is, or?
So that's the latest that we would do, go through the process of having a new ambulance service plan.
So if, as you're going through this mediation and, sitting down and working with each other and getting through those rough bumps and looking each other in the eye and say, we got to find a solution, could you move this forward quicker? Could you renegotiate if both parties wanted to?
So the contract itself, and I'm going to make sure that I don't get over speak here, but so the ambulance service plan is something that we would undertake as a county with an ambulance service plan review is something that we would undertake with our partners to really to take a look at that foundational document for our system and for any contract that we would then have with a provider. So the service plan itself says, really determines this is what we need in our system. That's why having a large group of stakeholders involved in that process, really understanding what that system should look like, whether we're talking about staffing models or response times or the type of, response that is given to different situations, that's really key. When that review is done, when that ambulance service plan is updated, then we would put that out to a contract. And that's when we would actually, reopen the contract with someone else or for anyone,
Okay. All right. Thank you. Questions from council?
Make a comment.
Yeah.
Counselor or Chair. Public safety is very important to me and Troutdale, and the negative press that you took specifically in these contracts and the news, our own chief of fire from Gresham coming out and telling us how long these ambulance times were. It was very disappointing to our community. And I think it could have been managed better from overall perspective. And having this opportunity, I would feel if I didn't take advantage of it to speak. If something like this in the future, got to get out in front of it sooner. I would appreciate it if you could get out in front of it sooner and tell the public how important they are to you and how much you mean to them to do the right thing and provide the services for safety quicker, sooner. The optics were not the best to say, you know, hey, we're sticking behind this contract and we're not making a change. The public felt a little slighted. So
Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, I also want to make sure that we're holding the company that's responsible for
100%.
delivering on the services that they have, they're contracted with the county.
100% on that as well.
Yeah, because ultimately it is about that response to the public. It is about having an insufficient response to the public based on what they said. And like I said, part of the reason that we started the two pilots that we'd been talking about in the first place was that the table of trying to be flexible and trying to find solutions, knowing that there's a staffing challenge here in this county, but also nationwide. But ultimately, it is about trying to hold folks accountable and trying to come to solutions, because it is about the community safety. It is about public safety. And it is about, finally, like somebody picking up that phone, knowing that they're going to get the response that they need. So
Thank you.
thank you. All right.
More questions? Yeah.
I'm Counselor Marker from the city of Fairview. Most of my fellow counselors know that I've probably taken an ambulance more than the norm. 2 years ago, I got COVID after making a selection for a brand new city manager from City Hall. I ended up getting what they call VTAC, which is ventricular tachycardia. It's a life-threatening situation to where your heart rate goes up to dangerous levels and you have to go to the hospital to get it taken care of. Each and every time that I've had to call 911 to get an ambulance, the fire department has showed up before the ambulance did. Only one time, I think I spoke with Chief Lewis that the fire department went to the wrong house one time, but that's it. Okay. And for me, I would like to see that the ambulance show up before the fire department, or else even call off the fire department if I didn't need the fire department, like my house ain't on fire. That's what I would like to see as somebody who has used the services quite often.
I appreciate that. And I think one of the wonderful things about the system that we do have is that we do have our fire response that does show up at the calls. They are dispatched, right, depending on the severity of the calls, so that we know that we have reliable fire service and fire response that's happening where there is a paramedic that's coming there. I think that there's also, the combination of who's deployed, and it depends on how the call comes into BOAC, but I appreciate that. We want to make sure. So one, very grateful for the firefighters for the work that they're doing and the way that they're taking care of the community, and also making sure that we've got that really strong paramedic response through our EMS system as well.
Thanks, Madam Chair.
Hi, Chair Vega Peterson. Thank you again for coming. I echo what a lot of the others have said tonight about just about appreciating your time and commitment to this. I also just want to say thank you for acknowledging that East County does have a voice and should need to be heard. Historically, I think that has not always felt like that's the case, especially for the 3 smaller cities out here. So I appreciate you making the time, and I really look forward to continued conversations and regular updates on this as you go forward and we go forward and everybody goes forward. So I just really appreciate that commitment. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. And I just want to take that opportunity to actually thank Greg and the other city managers for their partnership in this work too. They have been really great to work with through all of this. And I know our staff has enjoyed working with them as we're working through all these issues. And again, seeing how we can be in good communication and how we can be working together on these things.
Other questions?
I do have one. Understanding that BOAC is a pretty key piece in this whole puzzle. Has there been any movement, any traction on or updates as far as their system, their personnel, their staffing? Do you have any indication of how that is going?
Yeah, that's a great question. So as you all know, the BOAC system is run by the city of Portland, and it's the system for the entire county. I haven't gotten an update on BOAC recently. I don't know if Dr. Lewis or Dr. Bruno, if either of you have any more updates on the latest.
Option. Which you need to work toward accreditation. As they've gotten back to the record. This is, we're 99.9. Progress, books. Better, once they reach that milestone. Not there yet, the general plan.
Yeah, and I did meet with Commissioner Gonzalez a few weeks ago and said the same thing, that they're moving, they're moving to get to that accreditation.
So if I understand what you're saying is that you are trying to set it up to where paramedics are coming out for medical instead of fire. Is that what I understand you're saying?
Possible, someone's got. Sometimes the fire, you go across the street, the fire station like I do. Right now, officially. That's true.
Understood.
But again, there are components that the county control. Okay. Goal is really. Cost effectiveness.
Councilor Glantz.
Yes, two things. One, housekeeping. We couldn't hear anything the gentleman who was just speaking said. If speakers can move microphones, since this is a public meeting and being recorded, that would be helpful for everyone. And then the reason I raised my hand is I'm curious in the conversations with AMR if the response times are being considered. I was at a Gresham council meeting back in April, and they showed how East County in general got really high response times because there weren't any ambulances stationed nearby, even though we have Legacy Mount Hood as a possible resource. So I would just like to mention that, and I hope that we don't just look at, the main majority of where the calls may be and some of the more populated Portland areas, but East County in general is also looked at as a separate entity. Thank you.
Appreciate that. And that is one thing, the way that we have our ambulance service plan set up is that there is expectation that we have, one service district for the entire county, and we have expectations of delivery and service for the entire county, including East County. So I appreciate that. We have seen that the data around the response times too, especially geographic locations, times of day. So all of that is being looked at.
apologize for not having our last speaker come to the mic, Counselor Glantz. We'll make sure that anybody out there, if you want to make any comments, if I forget to do it, come on up to the mic. Others?
I'm sorry I'm late. I had East County Transportation right that ran into this just now, but so I apologize if I'm overlapping. But has there been discussion about using the EMTI license with paramedics? The Oregon is one of the few states that has that, where it's EMTB and they can also tube. I had one. It's expired now, but so has there been any discussion about using the EMTI license that Oregon allows as a way to maybe grease the wheels and get people to accept paramedic and an EMT?
It's a great question. I don't know at the moment. Currently, I think that the designations are just straight EMT or paramedic, but there are those more advanced and that are sort of on their way to either becoming a paramedic or have some more additional skill sets at hand. So
it's tubing and some broken bone stuff and the inflatable pants and a couple other things. And so I had one at one point, which I needed for my work at Katrina, but it's a step up, and the tubing is a huge step up from B. And so I would encourage you to look at if there's some intransigence of going from 2 paramedics to look at that as a requirement, because it's only an extra month of and a different test.
Gotcha. I will take that back to the team and see if there's some sort of state regulatory limitation on that. It may be that the state has specifications about EMT versus paramedic, but I'll double check.
Thank you.
Bringing it up. Yeah.
And
Thanks
if
for your
it-
service.
Yeah, and if it is a state thing, that this process right here that's happening at the state level, a good place for that, because I know that they've talked a couple of obstacles to getting more comprehensively.
Okay. Thank you again.
Thank you. I
For
appreciate
being
the
here.
time.
We do have some parallel work going on here, so we may need some more communication with you. And if you're putting together, any ad hoc group, you know where to find us.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair. All right. Thanks for the questions there. We don't often get a chance to talk to the county chair.
I know.
And especially on a topic as controversial that as the ambulance service has been.
Greg, before moving on, I'll quickly recap the answer to the question about BOAC and 911. And that is the last several years, BOAC 911 operator out of the city of Portland has been working to update its system. So it's operating software and it's triaging, as well as backfilling positions that have retired. So becoming both fully staffed as well as updating its systems to allow to better triage, or as stated, send the right people to the right kind of call. And so they're working towards a national accreditation. They're, I'll call it, a year plus away from that. And as they complete that and work through that, that allows then, I'll call it the global we as governments, to allow then to create new levels of service. So, prior to all this, it's police, it's fire, it's an ambulance. Now with, as we move forward with BOAC and 911 and they can further triage and create new layers, we then can create new layers. So, everything's just working really well together to create a new system that really better matches the resource needs and a more efficient use of the public dollar. So hopefully that's a recap of the answer. Hopefully that helps fill in that blank there.
Well, and Greg, I'll just add this, what we've seen and looked at nationally, the fire departments around the country that are doing what we want to do, and they're doing it now. That's a piece of it that allows them to do it, is to not send trucks out for somebody with a sprained ankle. So that's, and as we hear it here, we're a ways away from it, but we got to keep an eye on where we want to be.
So moving forward on some additional, just more background information, future next steps. Again, there's a lot of legal and political aspects to this, both in terms of how one may annex into a district, create a new district, the processes involved that are both state and county level. I'll call That's again how we're talking to our community members, both at just informational level, what things may cost, how that may be paid for, and that we're going to need more layers of involvement. This is just a first step of many and the first set of most of our options will probably include some sort of voter approval referendum. That's a whole other project in and of itself. And then certainly as we continue to work through this together, hopefully again, Gresham comes to a table. We can keep our county friends engaged. County is a big organization and it's nice to have some key people in there that we want to connect with just to make sure we're not missing opportunities to coordinate or provide information. Some specific things that we know we're going to need either during this analysis, after the analysis. Again, it's the we're looking at bonds for capital costs, startup costs, polling, focus groups, public opinion research. What are people willing to spend on what? Just general PR in general about keeping them informed, having those consistent talking points, but also what's important to each community in this discussion. What's it going to take to build new fire stations or have the right kind of apparatus or equipment? We do have to, if it's a new district, you have to develop I think it's first and third year operating budget and capital needs. And that's part of the overall process to refer it to the voters. So again, this isn't designed to really, what does this all mean right now today? It's just helping remind everyone the depth that this process is going, and we're taking our first step through this journey together tonight. But happy to answer at some level any question that you may have about kind of maybe these future next steps, or I'll invite Ray or Rachel to answer those questions. Okay, so this is where I'm going to get at again. Separate bucket, but didn't want to miss the opportunity to remind everyone, we still need fire service after June 30, 2025. And I think, again, probably meeting more fall time together. Hopefully we've been able to talk with Gresham some more at a staff level, maybe even at a mayoral level. What are the important pieces of this? How can we get to yes on it? What are our interests in a renewal? And then we can all come back together and really refine that. Pretty much, hopefully use the same process that worked well the last go around 10 years ago. So again, don't need to talk much about it tonight, but again, wanted to keep that on the radar. And certainly it's on some of your all's radar already, like, hey, what about Gresham? Yes. We'll put that in a separate bucket. So I'm going to turn it over to Ray and talk about what Troutdale's been doing in their committee, looking at public safety from the law enforcement perspective at work. So Ray, take it away.
Thanks, Greg. Just like with Gresham Fire, all three cities have a contract with Multnomah County Sheriff's Office to provide law enforcement services. The difference is we're not all on the same contract or the same timeline. Troutdale's law enforcement contract with Multnomah County Sheriff's expires next summer, the same date as the fire contract, July 1st of 2025. I believe Fairview's is the following summer in 2026. And Wood Village, I think it's just an ongoing contract until they say they want to change it. Ours was actually the first contract that had specific metrics of law enforcement provision as what they were supposed to provide to us. In our current contract, we are provided a 2/3 time chief, command level individual. We are provided 2 deputies on the road 24/7. We added 1 community resource deputy about 3 years ago, which was a 40-hour-a-week deputy who just works Troutdale and is more directed by the city through our chief. And then we have a 0.5 community resource deputy that was originally supposed to be beach patrol in the summer, but we found that was inefficient to just limit them to the beach. And so we are using that more as a half-time community resource deputy, primarily in the summer. So we are looking to expand those into our next contract. And so on April 30th, I met with the sheriff and her team, and we laid out a couple changes that we wanted in our contract beginning in 2025, which is we want to increase that chief FTE to 1 full-time chief who doesn't have anything else to do at the sheriff's office. What we have found with a 2/3 chief is that that individual, and this is no derogatory statement about any of the four we've had, they're wonderful individuals, but the county routinely gives them other full-time jobs to do at the county. And I don't think we've ever gotten more than 20% FTE, and then we're paying for 2/3. I spent time talking to Happy Valley. Clackamas County Sheriff has several contracts out there, and they have a full-time chief, and that's their only job, is just to be the chief for Happy Valley. And so I asked the sheriff if they'd look into that. We'd like to pay that extra 1/3, but we'd like to get all of that individual to spend their time in Troutdale. So shook that away. The second thing we asked is that our 0.5 FTE that we have now, we'd like to increase that to a second regular full FTE community resource deputy, so that we would have 2 deputies on the road 24/7. And then we'd have 2 40-hour resource deputies with complementary schedules, so that we would have that specific law enforcement in Troutdale that would respond just to Troutdale, and they'd be dedicated officers. They don't switch around like the patrol. We also asked them to make the chief also oversee and manage our, we have a full-time code compliance officer. So we would, in some ways, the idea was we would have a mini Troutdale Police Department with a full-time chief, 2 full-time community resource deputies that only do Troutdale, and the code compliance officer. The other thing the sheriff came back with, which was a good question, is, well, in our contract, since it was the first one, we are paying for 1 FTE for a detective, we're paying for 1 FTE for an office assistant, and we're paying 1 FTE for a records technician. But we don't really know if we're getting any of that, or we need more than that. So the sheriff's office went back to see if those need to be increased from their side of the equation. So they promised they'd get back to me the middle of June, and this is the middle of June, and so I have on my calendar this week to bug the sheriff's office to find out where they're at getting back to me on what they think the FTE looks like. Because once we get this FTE settled, then the sheriff's office could then start calculating the numbers of what they want to charge us for that FTE. So we'll be working with them on that over the next month. I'll keep your other city managers informed, because they're going to come knocking on your door in a year for Fairview, and at some point they may want to get more formal with Wood Village about the level of services provided. So I'll keep them in the loop. The other thing that we are doing, Friday afternoon, I had a meeting with Jensen Strategies. Some of you are familiar with Jensen Strategies. They do also headhunting work for city managers, but they also do a lot of reports for cities. And so we've employed them to do a study as to what would it cost if we wanted to recreate the Troutdale Police Department. And then what would it cost to operate the Troutdale Police Department? We gave them the similar to their FTE that we want from the sheriff's office beginning in 2025. So in a couple of weeks, we should have, well, before July 22nd, our next public safety working group meeting, we will have their final report. So I went with that on Friday, made some tweaks. One of the things that we had to make sure they paid attention to was back when Fairview and Troutdale had police departments, we were slightly under market in terms of Gresham, Multnomah County, Portland Police. And so I told them that in this market where law enforcement officers are really hard to hire these days, it's a tough market these days, that we had to make sure that this estimation of what it would cost to operate and start that had to take that into account. So I want to make sure that the salaries were going to be competitive with Gresham, Clackamas County, and Multnomah County. I also want to make sure that they included in there that not just a patrol car that everybody uses, for every shift, but every individual deputy or sworn officer gets their own patrol car. That's what the market's providing out there now. And so we've got to be competitive. They also are building into the budget some incentives. A number of jurisdictions are offering $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 incentives to sign up or transfer. So that study will be done in a couple of weeks. I'm not very optimistic that it will be cheaper than the sheriff's office. It's going to be more expensive, but I never like to go into a negotiation having only one option, which is you in terms of the sheriff's office. So we're getting that option. And once we get the FTEs done, we may look to ask Gresham to bid on it too. I don't know if they're willing at this point. They've had a change in leadership over there since the last time I asked. So those are the things we're looking at. I will tell you that our council and public safety working group has talked about the idea that if we thought it was a serious endeavor for us to try to restart the Troutdale Police Department, we would definitely include the other 2 cities in the discussion, because once we get these basic numbers, it's a lot easier to add if we added a few more officers and coverage to cover the other two cities so that you would have that option also. So that's what we're working on right now. Hopefully by the middle of July, I'll get the report that'll tell us the cost for the Troutdale Police Department. And I should have some basic information back from the sheriff's office as to how they're going to approach our next negotiation so we can start getting those numbers. So that's where we're at with law enforcement. Any questions at all?
I do have one. I lived in Hawaii for 4 years. And most of the police cars belonged to the police officers that drove them, okay? And what happens is police officer gets a call, jumps in his private vehicle, which is paid for by the people of Hawaii, and he puts a little cherry on top and goes and does his thing, okay? What would prevent us for us being able to do something like that? And the one thing that I want to remind you of, that car is considered to be an unmarked vehicle until he puts that light on the top of it. So he's able to run radar, whatever. And so why can't we do something like that?
Yeah, I have never looked at the details of the Hawaii, how they do municipal police work. So I'll have to look and see what they actually do for their police cars. Do you remember what jurisdiction that was?
Honolulu.
Oh, okay.
I know your favorite island to go to and they do it.
Yeah,
there
I'll
too.
a week investigating what.
Yeah. I
prove that. Dang it.
I know where you go on vacation.
I just got back from Hawaii and the fastest speed I did was about 53 miles per hour is the main reason why they can drive their own car.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's easier. So
Spend some time on the big island in between Hilo and Kona. You can get above 53.
Ray, thanks. That'd be, that'll be some interesting numbers to look at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
it will.
I'm glad you're doing it.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed your reprieve from my voice. I'll just clean up here and just walk through, make sure we recap the next steps appropriately, that we're on the same page. So basically, we're good with the RFP as written. I will send it back to Ray and Rachel just to make sure that it is clean, fill in the blanks of submission dates and whatnot. Between now and then, I'm sure you all gather and decide who on your council and staff will be on a review committee. We're also aware of, Fairview's still going to be going through some transition. I just want to let both, Rachel know and you and the community of Fairview that Troutdale and Wood Village will certainly do what we can to help support this work so it moves forward. A named city manager that we're collectively here for our collective community. So no worries on that. And when the new person gets on board, we'll get them back up to speed. There's a lot of party left here. So we'll send out the RFP. My guess will be published early next week. A few weeks for submittals come in. The city advertises in the Business Tribune, but we'll also direct solicit to known firms that do this work. Whomever on your team will review it, will get the packets, come back to us, make a collective decision, we'll award it and get underway. In the meantime, we'll certainly keep the county in the loop on our work and their work. And then, as you saw, all the future work to go. So again, just want to thank you for allowing us to host a meeting this evening, for you to listen to my voice for an hour and a half, for your time and service to not just your own community, but our collective 3-city region.
Any questions? Comments? Yeah.
I was curious if either Fairview or Wood Village are hiring their own community resource officers at this time.
No.
We've toyed with the idea, but
Did you say?
there's some other things we need to shore up first.
Did you say Wood Village or?
I was asking for Fairview and
Wood Village.
the same question.
Not at this time.
Okay.
I can say that the Public Safety Advisory Committee was asked about 2 years ago to look at the options for bringing on additional, either a community resource officer, another deputy, or even looking at private security. But based on those discussions, we were not able to move on them at the time, but.
Yeah.
Because we've had really good results with ours. I will caution you though, that they are our most expensive employee that we have, because the county sheriff charges administrative fee and they charge for equipment and car. So I think it's around $200,000 for a 40-hour person, but
And that was what the committee recommended, was that we go with a community resource officer versus adding deputies. But the cost was the thing that kept us from moving forward.
You know, that price tag thing.
kind of the question that would help me make this decision as it's coming towards us, it would be, if we did go with Gresham or if we did recreate our own police service, what kind of service are we going to get from the county? Because we had county policing overlapping with our private policing. It'd be nice to have somebody look into that or find an answer to that question.
Well, at least at the current period of time, Fairview also has an unincorporated portion of the city, which by mandate has to be MCSO. So we're automatically linked in with them under the current layout.
Okay.
Anything else?
Mr. Mayor, is now a good time to make a motion to consolidate all three cities into one city? Create a giant 21-person council, and I would be happy to accept the nomination for mega mayor of all three. Do I have a second, Glenn?
Well, I have a name actually for the city.
Yeah.
We could all have districts, little districts that would be our fiefdoms.
We are now sitting at the same size that the Portland City Council will be at.
21.
Yeah. I actually have a name for the, if we get there, of calling it Chinook, Oregon. I checked. Right on the Columbia River. I think it'd be a great name.
Well, let's make a record of that.
Solid no.
We are being referred
Glenn's
to
gonna
as,
start my recall.
in several conversations, I've heard that we are being referred to now as Tri-Cities.
The
Tri-Cities.
The Southern Tri-Cities.
Yeah, so anyway, thanks for the work tonight. We'll be seeing each other. Let's hopefully continue to get along a little bit and have some fun. So Greg and Ray and Rachel, thanks for the leadership on this and the work you're doing. So
Yeah, thank you, everybody.
we are adjourned.
Good meeting, Greg.
Thank you.
Hate to we ended early.
I don't think we've ever ended early at Troutdale. Good job. Good job, John.